And our previous panels demonstrate there undoubtedly is an urge for diversity in the technology industry. As what we thought was the future is now the present, one that is diverse. Our next panel will talk more about this. Rosa Jimenez from the Venture City will lead and introduce our next speakers. So please help me welcome Veronica with a round of applause.
I love that we do things in English now. It wasn't so common time ago in Spain. I'm Rosa Jimenez. Maybe you know me from some other film. No, I'm kidding. I used to be a journalist. Now I'm part of a VC fund and a tech accelerator. The Venture City, we are based in Madrid, Miami, Silicon Valley, and Australia. And as you can see, I've been working in tech for 11 years. And I felt lonely, but now I'm not alone. I have some more colleagues, and more we are having more women in tech. One of the things that I didn't like until, let's say, 2 years ago or so, I was always running away from these kind of panels because I didn't want to feel like being a little pity or like, oh, I feel bad about this, or being like a shaming thing. But I think things are changing in tech, so if you're okay, we're going to talk about that. She's Itxaso?
Yeah, perfect. Itxaso.
Itxaso, good. From M12, she's a VC fund from Bilbao. From where are you?
Yeah, well, I'm Basque, but I've been 15 years outside of Spain. I live in London. Yeah, I come here for conferences once in a while, and I love it. But basically, I'm pretty much a foreigner.
Good. And Christine Roop? Yeah, Roop. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. She's the CEO from Ethan Partners. Where are you based?
London.
London, so very UK thing. We won't talk about the Brexit, for sure. We have some other things to talk about. So first of all, I would like to know, how did you get into tech? And also, when you aware that you were a woman in tech, that you were different? I ask this because for a long time, I was never feeling like I was a woman in tech until recently, and I understood what was going on. But the thing is, I think I never felt I was fewer or something not as good or as valuable as all my colleagues, because I was never counting how many men or women were there. I was just jumping to things or starting doing that. So I don't know if that's a good attitude or a bad attitude, or how did you feel about it? When were you aware that we are a minority in that? So up to you.
I can go for it. I'm an engineer by background, so that's how you get in tech, pretty straightforward, right? It was a choice. I loved my engineering degree when I studied in Bilbao, and just after my undergrad, the first 3 years, I moved to Germany, and I worked as an engineer at Daimler, the car manufacturer.
Well, you mean like Mercedes, no?
Yeah, of course, I'm calling it Daimler because in Germany it was called Daimler, but at the time it was Mercedes Daimler. They were together, but it was in Berlin. I was one of the only women, definitely in my department at the time. I'm talking about 2000, very young. It was very boring. I was very disappointed because it was totally mismatch. I loved my engineering degree. I think pretty much as an engineer, I'm very technical, and suddenly I saw myself at a factory which was very slow moving, and I mean, the problem wasn't that there weren't any women there, that was probably a differentiator. I was in the assembly line, managing quality. So as you can imagine, when you are 22 years old and you are standing there and people are assembling cars and you are looking at and telling them how to do it, and they are, I don't know, 35, 40 years old, 50 years old, and I'm telling them basically. So it was a hard year. I learned a lot, definitely. I stayed there for a year, and I thought that that couldn't be my life until I was 65 years old. So I went back to school and I did a PhD, and that's how I got more into venture and technology transfer. But I think the first job out of university was pretty much in an assembly line at Daimler, a car manufacturer, which was like every other man in my engineering class wanted to work for Mercedes. Can you imagine? I was like, I got it. So I don't know how, but I just got there. So yeah.
You did it.
Yeah.
Good. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm CEO of Ethan Partners, and we do executive search. So we support high-growth internet companies with putting together their senior management teams. And we work very internationally, and we work with about 150 companies. And I founded the company myself about 5.5 years ago now. And we focus a lot on, I mean, it's high-growing companies, so our clients are post-Series A, all the hot tech startups out there, and also a lot of the global rollouts. So companies like Uber, Airbnb, House, Zomato, supporting them when they're scaling and entering new markets. But before I started Ethan Partners, so I've probably been in tech for about 10 years, I studied business at Copenhagen Business School, and my first job out of uni was actually within digital marketing. So that's how I entered the tech world through marketing. And I remember that I specialized in digital marketing because 10 years ago, there weren't that many people doing digital, and I could see it was a good way to differentiate from the other people at university. And that was an advantage. And then one of the first international companies that I joined was Groupon when they were doing their international rollout. So I joined very early stage with Groupon, actually in China, of all places. So I moved to China in Beijing to do marketing. But one of the things that I realized very quickly is being non-Chinese to set up the marketing department in China can be very challenging when you don't speak the language. So I was a classic example of actually a wrong hire. But then I transitioned into recruiting very quickly within Groupon. So that's how I started within recruiting, a bit of a coincidence.
Yeah.
And then I was involved with Groupon's global rollout, where I became responsible for all the senior executive recruiting for all of the markets outside of the US. So that was about 47 markets at the time. And that was where I got exposure to really high growth tech companies and also a very large international network. And then through my time with Groupon, or during Groupon, I got in contact with Rocket Internet, where I worked for 2 years. And with Rocket, I was responsible for the senior executive recruiting for all of the portfolio companies at the time. And this is back in 2011, where Rocket Internet was a German company, expanding out of Germany, but relatively unknown, and definitely no presence out of Europe. So I was involved in that journey with taking Rocket Internet global and seeing all of the ventures, being set up, especially with a strong focus on emerging markets. So that was where I really got involved with the tech scene, but also with recruiting as well. And what I focus on, it's hiring for the senior management roles. So I definitely got to experience firsthand, well, you could probably say the lack of women in senior management roles.
Yeah.
Because for all the positions, we were putting together the founding teams and the senior management teams for all of the portfolio companies in 47 countries, and there was only a handful of women back then who were in those senior roles. And today, the last 5.5 years, we work with 150 startups. They're all post-Series A, so they have funding, they're doing well. A lot of them are market leaders. And I can only think of to be honest, I can actually only think of 1 or 2 female founders of all of the companies that we've worked with.
Let's say that where I work, we are more than 60% women.
Oh, yeah.
Our co-founder, founder, and CEO and co-founder are women too. So I think we are kind of a rare species there on this area, but I think that more and more there are many more chances and opportunities, not just to build things, but also to create awareness. I've never felt like an ambassador of this, but I think right now there's kind of a good environment to start showing that we are as good as men. And also with all those diversity issues, I think we can make the rest of the world understand that our point of view is valuable. So sometimes I feel I'm fed up of products made by men, meant to be for women. So I want to ask you both, as people on C-level or taking decisions, how much do you evaluate different point of view, and how do you push your company to be aware that we have to not just have one point of view, but different ones, and that woman is a good addition to build a product?
So I can respond to that one. So I'm part of an investment team. So we are global. I'm the only person in Europe. It's a former M12 for Microsoft Ventures, because in fact I'm transitioning to a traditional venture capital fund as a partner. There were 5 partners, 1 left. 5 of them were men in this VC firm that I'm joining. 1 of the men left, and so I'm joining. I'm the first woman coming in, and all of them are British too, which is interesting. So when we talk about diversity, it's not, they really wanted some diversity, and they weren't even looking for a woman. They were even looking for a different culture, right? So my accent, obviously, it's quite different from them. The interesting part is in the team, so we've done through, obviously when you hire a partner, you need to go through quite a lot of due diligence, understanding of the different people. You are bringing somebody to be basically in the executive team, right? And so they did a lot of, we did a lot of case studies, we work with entrepreneurs, we look at companies together. And when we were around the table, obviously the companies meeting us, they had no idea that these people were evaluating me while we were evaluating companies for their investments, right? And so when the companies were leaving, it was very interesting to hear them to point to things that they will never have mentioned. They were like, that point about the product, I don't think anybody in our team had never even looked at that. And that's like really interesting, right? We had no perspective on that. And it was like very interesting for me to see them pointing to things that I was bringing on board. And obviously, and now I'm joining them. I mean, it's still undisclosed because I'm still employed by M12 or Microsoft, and I'm transitioning. But it has been great to see that from them, and how open they were and how much value they were. Like, that was pretty fascinating. I was like, that was like pretty simple, right? But it's good.
Makes total sense. And what about you?
So with Ethan Partners, since I'm the founder, well, maybe not since, but we have a lot of women on the team. So we are predominantly female on the team. But one thing that I have noticed, so we've worked with lots of companies, and a lot of our clients, they actually ask us if we can find female candidates for a lot of the roles. And a lot of the companies, they do come to us and they say, our entire management team is male. We don't have any women on the management team. Could you please help find? Of course, we're open to, we don't want to differentiate. We want the best person for the role, but we would be really pleased if we could find some women or some female candidates for the team. The worst thing is actually that it's not the companies that don't want to hire women. It's, we actually struggle to find female candidates that are, that are suitable and interested in the role. And I think one of the challenges is because within tech and within startups, there's a lot more risk involved compared to joining joining corporate. There's also, less benefits, typically more, the environments are more dynamic, more chaotic, and I think a lot of women, they just feel more comfortable in, something a bit more secure. And I can see that a lot of the male candidates, they take more risk, which I personally think is a shame. So it's not that the companies don't want to hire women or against hiring women. If anything, they actually are begging us to find candidates, and we really try to find female candidates. But for most of the roles, especially the more technical positions, we struggle to find female candidates who are interested in the role and interested in doing that transition. So I think there's also there's a lack of of talent
Talents.
available as well.
Yeah, that was my following point. That one of the things I see every year, like Google, Facebook, they announce their new how they are doing on this diverse thing, more Latinos, more Asians, more women. But if you get and you go deeper into that, most of women are communications, marketing,
Yeah.
legal, finance. But it's difficult to find more women in tech. I think it's not just something vocational, but also the kind of work they're going to have. So what would you do to have more engineer women like you are? What do you think? What do you think is the moment that they leave the track?
Yeah.
And also, how could you make more a friendly environment for women? Any of
So I have a great idea about that, and I'm trying to put it in place, in fact, because
sometimes the excuse is they are not. I can find them because they are not there.
and
so
I
let's
think
make them.
I think it comes a lot from the role models and the education that you received in the past, and I would say usually it's from your parents, because schools can basically affect or determine a little bit, 10-20% of what you do, but what you eat at home and you see at home, I think it's very, very important. But role models are very important, and unfortunately not every other kid has the opportunity to have a good role model at home, that they are telling them what their possibilities are, how wide is this market. I believe many of us, we do have kids, and we will be amazing pushing them to do, but no, they're not all the kids do have parents who come to South Summit, right? This is a small minority. So I would say there is something that I've been thinking about, because the CEO of Microsoft in the UK, her name is Cindy Rose. She's amazing. She's an amazing woman. And one day I was going to grab a coffee with her, and she said, well, I need to cancel it because they changed my school speech. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, for the last 3 years, I go to schools, 12 years old girls, and I give talks every month to a different school, to the 12 years old girls, that they need to make a decision in the next year what to do. And I've been doing it for the last 3 years.
Wow.
I was amazed. So her PA finds the schools, and she goes and gives informal talks to 12 years old girls. And I think that is an amazing role model, like the CEO of Microsoft in the UK, who is a woman. And I think it's our responsibility as women to empower the next generations and to tell them that they can make it work, that it's super fun, technology is for them. Look, we are doing technology and we should do it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say also it starts with education, because I think that there's just a lack of females entering, educations that are more technical and becoming engineers or learning to code. It's still very male dominated, and I do agree as well that it's lack of role models. So I think there's definitely a lot to be done within that area, like educating children or highlighting the advantages of maybe studying something else and not something that's very female dominated. So that's definitely, where I think it should start very young.
That's one of the topics, but also I think there are like, from our side, I think we need to change like the mindset when we see, I don't know, like a job offer. It's not that if women have less than 7 of the 10 points, we wouldn't apply. And men, if they think they have 5, they would apply.
Yeah.
So it's something related to self-esteem. But on the other hand, I think the other side have to change too, that sometimes men do activities for men or do things for them, or they go and have lunch together instead of the team. And one of the things that I really pay attention to, and it's just an anecdote, but every time I go to a conference, I pay attention to see if they have woman t-shirts, to see if they are willing to see that we are going or not. They think they are unisex. I think there are no unisex t-shirts. It's like, this is going to be my pajamas. It's not something I'm going to wear. And I don't know if you've read about all the Uber turmoil. One of the things that happened is that they have like a bonus for the team, and they could have leather jackets if they get that to that point. And they're wearing leather jackets for women. So they were like, we were all we're doing these things. So there are like maybe little details that make you feel rejected or out of that. So how could you convince men to be aware that some of their behaviors are a little bit like rejecting us? I make jokes about the t-shirts to see if they
it's a very good question.
Works.
How to change society,
we have to change our mindset and
basically.
apply. We have 5 points, that's for sure. But
One thing that I have noticed, so I come from Denmark.
okay.
I'm Danish, and in Denmark, I would say we're very equal in society, and women are not treated differently to the same extent. I think it goes to Scandinavia as well. There's a lot more equality between genders, and I think also, like growing up, I never noticed that there was a difference between male and female. If anything, I have a very strong mother, very strong female role model. I was like, yeah, women are just as good, if not even better, as men. They can multitask, they can do a lot of things. So I think it's also a culture. You can see differences depending on the country and the culture. So, I mean, a lot of things have to change, but I think a lot of it's through awareness, and a lot of things are already happening. But there's definitely a lot more that can be done.
I would say just try to really make jokes out of it. I think many in our industry, I mean, it is, for example, in venture capital, it is clear that there are less women raising money than men.
Yeah.
I don't think venture capitalist investors feel proud about that. They don't brag about it. I can't see a partner in my firm saying, it's great, women, only 2% of women raise money. No, they feel embarrassed. They feel embarrassed and they want to improve that. So I really don't think there is a conscious decision. So I think as a woman, keeping it positive and making jokes about it, in fact, openly raising up jokes about it instead of getting in silence and thinking, why did this person say that and do that, right? Or getting angry. So keeping it positive and making jokes about it, I think they will feel a little bit embarrassed too at the time, and it's not that they feel proud about it, it's just they didn't think about it, and I think it will take a little bit of time. So I think it's our responsibility to make fun of it and try to change it. But overall, and obviously, if they have that attitude that they don't want to change it, probably you don't even want to work with them. So you will like to make them feel embarrassed at that point too, right? That's what they deserve anyway.
Yeah. We make jokes in my company because we are 2 Latina founders on their 40s and foreigners raising money for tech, so we have all the odds to go wrong, and we're still there doing it and doing well. So sometimes it's just a matter of laughing about the figures and the numbers and go ahead and let's see what happens. And do you have any children and kids?
Yes.
And
I don't.
Okay.
That's actually another area where, of course, I didn't realize before I had children, but I have a son who's almost 2. And that's actually one thing that's different on a more negative side in Scandinavia is there's a lot of pressure towards women going on maternity leave. And in Scandinavia, it's typically 1 year that you go maternity leave. So if you have several children, it's several years that you're out, that you're not working. And I personally, I only took 2 weeks maternity leave because, having your own company and feeling responsible for employees and working hard, be very career focused, so it can be done. You can combine, a career with having children, but there's actually a lot of negativity towards it. So what I experienced was, it's not that people are saying, wow, that's amazing that you can combine a career with having children at a young age. It's more, what about your son? Who's taking care of your son? And it's of course not as if my son's alone at home, not, or neglected anyway. It's just more about being smart.
Yeah.
But it does require more flexibility in the work space as well. So, having my own company, being a founder, I'm able to work from home, which gives a lot of flexibility. And I can also decide when I want to travel. And I bring my son on my travels. Last year when I attended South Summit, I actually had my son with me. He was, I think he was 8 months at the time, so I brought him along with my mother. So I think it does require flexibility in the workforce as well to encourage women.
Good. I don't know
to
if you remember
keep their careers.
When Marisa Mayer had the last
Yes.
kid, that she took the kid or the baby
Yeah.
to her office, and she even had like a cradle and a space.
Yeah.
And it was a big turmoil. It's like, what if she had taken like 4 months? It would have been a turmoil anyway. So whatever they do is going to be wrong because people are all the time judging. So I think she just decided to go her way, do her best, and let people talk and speak. And she became an anecdote, but she's also a role model.
She was actually a role model
so
for
she
me
did
when
it.
I
Why not?
had children.
So I think it was good for the tech industry. Maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. She should have taken 4 months out. But for a woman CEO, it was like, oh, she did it, and she demonstrated we can do it too. So I think that kind of movement, like the role model thing, is very important. But also I feel like the media has to be helping, not just going to those harassment things, but also put like woman heroes for girls or parents. They say, oh, I want to be like this one.
Yeah.
So if there's somebody you want to follow, like your friend was doing at school, is somebody you want to be like her. If you don't see it, you feel you are blinded or you are lost into that track. So I think there's lots of things to do on social media, how people respond when it's a woman. We have fewer retweets or fewer likes if it's a woman who delivers the message. So I think there are more and more to do in this. And I don't know if any of you wants to make a question. Yeah, there's one question. You. Un minuto? Una pregunta, un minuto. 1 minute, one question. Does anybody has a question? Or, okay, you. If no, I was going to ask you to think one piece of advice you could give to women in tech. But I can't hear you.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah. So just a little comment. You're talking a lot about the women versus men.
No,
But a little bit like that. I was wondering, the real question is whether, like, traditionally, women, attitudes towards work or collaboration are actually beneficial in the workplace, because they are. But are they fostered by the big companies? So, you can be a woman, but you can lead in a manly kind of a style, right? Mm-hmm. You can be a woman and have more female trait leaderships, which I think are more suited actually for the future generations. So I think the question is, maybe not men versus women, but also, the style of leadership, some of the traits of leadership that are important.
Yeah, like we have different skills, and we are not taking advantage in that instead of confronting. Yeah, thank you. So what would be your piece of advice for women who are in tech?
I can start. I definitely like to think, and I've always think this way. Always keep in mind that being a woman is an asset. It's an asset, and you gotta leverage it and use it, because really it's something positive. And in our industry, men are willing to have women around. So it is an asset. Just believe it. In the leadership style, I'm totally a woman. I dress as a woman. I go and I deal with my founders as a woman. I negotiate as a woman. And my previous boss, in fact, told me that I'm very aggressive, and he's Israeli, by the way. And it is a way to behave, but I definitely think it's an asset, and you gotta use it, because we have very good elements on reading how people think, how people behave, and for negotiation, for example, I think we are fantastic. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I definitely agree with that. Another thing that could also be mentioned is also, I think an area where women differentiate from men is actually that I feel men are better at supporting each other and helping each other, whereas women, they're not as good. And you can also just see that through networks, through helping out, through introductions. So I think not that it should be, men against women or women, isolated, but I think that there's a lot that we can do to help each other and support each other as women, and also, use our networks and get more out of our networks, than a lot of women do today. I think a lot of women, they hold back. They don't like to be as outgoing and go out and network the same way as men do. So I think that's definitely an area where we can support each other.
Good piece of advice. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you.